To establish a state and preserve it for centuries against foreign invasions is no easy task. We mostly read about collapsed states on the pages of history, yet even in our own time there are many countries that have failed to maintain their integrity and have disintegrated. Today I will tell you about the states that have broken apart and collapsed in the 21st century. History lovers, please subscribe to my Telegram channel linked below the video. I'll be sharing interesting historical facts there. Yemen. In the 1990s, Yemen was a unified state. In 2011, during the period of the Arab Spring, the people took to mass protests and overthrew the president's authority. Disagreements arose in the country between Sunnis and Shiites, and in 2014, the Shiite Houthis carried out a takeover and occupied the capital of Yemen, the city of Sana'a. They also launched a campaign toward the south. Seeing the rise of the Shiites, Iran welcomed it and armed the Houthis, since Yemen holds strategic importance. It directly influences the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, which is considered extremely vital for global maritime routes, and provides opportunities to exert influence on the Arabian Peninsula. Fearing the growing power of the Shiites, their complete takeover of Yemen, and the influence of their political rival Iran, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates launched a joint campaign against the Shiite Houthis in 2015. However, the Houthis, being located in a geographically advantageous region, put up fierce resistance and inflicted heavy losses on the Saudi and Emirati forces. As a result, the Saudis and their allies were unable to drive the Houthis out of the territories they had seized. Today, although Yemen appears on the map as a single state, in reality it is divided into three parts. The east and part of the south are controlled by Sunnis supported by Saudi Arabia. The south is controlled by Sunnis under the influence of the United Arab Emirates, who seek to establish an independent state of South Yemen. The north and northwest are controlled by the Shiite Houthis. Sudan. Sudan was the largest country in Africa by territory. However, there were serious internal problems. In the north lived Muslims with Arab heritage, while in the south there were Christians and animists. These two sides had different views. In addition, the south was rich in oil. The people of southern Sudan protested that the northerners were taking their oil. As a result, two prolonged civil wars took place, from 1955 to 1972 and from 1983 to 2005. In the end, they reached an agreement. According to the peace treaty, South Sudan was granted autonomous status and the right to hold a referendum on independence in 6 years. After this period, in 2011, a referendum was held in which 98.8% of the population voted in favor of independence. As a result, South Sudan separated and became an independent state. The Muslim Sudanese in the north lost 75% of their oil reserves. However, the division did not bring them peace. New civil wars erupted due to the struggle of internal groups for power. In northern Sudan, a civil war has been ongoing since 2023. As a result of the clashes between the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces who are fighting for power, the country's capital, Khartoum, has been destroyed. Millions of people have been forced to flee their homes. In South Sudan, immediately after gaining independence, a war broke out between the Dinka and Nuer peoples. Both sides sought to bring their representatives to power. The war only ended after the 2018 agreement. However, even today, conflicts periodically flare up in some regions. Although the war between North and South Sudan has ended, border disputes and the issue of oil have not been fully resolved. Libya. Under Muammar Gaddafi, Libya was a very wealthy and influential state in Africa. Gaddafi did not yield to the West, did not obey their directives, and pursued an independent policy. He sought to strengthen the unity of African countries and wanted them to be independent from Western nations, not only in words but also in practice. To this end, he launched numerous projects which especially angered the United States. The final straw for the U.S. was Gaddafi's project known as the Golden Dinar. Under this project, Gaddafi proposed the creation of a single African currency backed by gold to be used for selling oil without involving the dollar or the euro. Such an initiative could have strengthened the economies of African countries and contributed to reducing poverty. At the same time, it posed a serious challenge to the positions of the US dollar and the euro, as well as to their influence over African resources. As a result, the view emerged in Western countries that these plans, along with their author, Gaddafi, needed to be stopped. In 2011, the Arab Spring took place, and some groups within Libya were provided with weapons and money to organize an uprising. While the Libyan army was struggling to suppress the revolt, the joint NATO forces, under the pretext of protecting civilians and establishing democracy, launched powerful airstrikes. This led to Gaddafi falling into the hands of the rebels. In the end, he was brutally killed, and Libya lost its unity and wealth, plunging into chaos and devastation. At present, Libya has split into three parts: the Government of National Unity, recognized by the United Nations. It is supported militarily by Turkey and financially by Qatar. Eastern Libya under the leadership of Khalifa Haftar. It is supported by Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, and Russia. Tribal groups. Libya has many tribes, some of which do not submit to anyone and live independently. Haiti. In 2010, a devastating earthquake with a magnitude of 7 struck Haiti. The force of the earthquake was so great that the country's capital was heavily damaged. About 300,000 people were killed, hundreds of thousands were injured, and millions were left homeless. Representatives of the United Nations came to provide assistance. However, among the Nepalese soldiers in the UN peacekeeping forces, there were those infected with cholera. Their waste entered one of Haiti's most important rivers, the Artibonite, infecting a population already in a dire situation. As a result, a cholera epidemic broke out in the country. 800,000 people fell ill and more than 10,000 died. This disaster devastated the nation's economy and plunged the people into widespread poverty. In 2021, President Jovenel Moïse was assassinated in his residence. Following this event, criminal groups immediately rose to power, while the weak army and police were unable to resist them. Since then, Haiti has effectively collapsed. Various gangs have taken full control of the country and subject ordinary citizens to unbearable violence. In particular, due to the constant shootouts between gangs on the streets, the killing of civilians has become a common occurrence. The gangs break in and demand heavy tributes from the already impoverished population. Those who cannot pay are executed. They storm into homes, raping women and girls in front of their husbands and fathers. Small children are kidnapped to be raised as future soldiers. During battles with rival gangs, they invade villages under their opponent's control, carry out mass massacres, and burn houses along with the people inside. Haiti is a very small country with a population of 11.5 million. A shortage of land, a devastated economy, and the lawlessness of gangs force many people to wander across the country in search of food. Some of them build makeshift boats to cross into Mexico and then move on to the United States, while others try to flee to Brazil. However, the poorly made boats often sink. Moreover, the border guards of these countries, in most cases, send them back. As a result, more than 11 million people have become victims of gangs. In other words, Haiti effectively collapsed back in 2021. There is no government authority. The police and the army are unable to protect the population. Power is in the hands of ruthless gangs that are at war with each other.